be under the bright lights. I want to be on the Broadway stage.
Tiger Rag Radio is on now.
Welcome to hour number 2 of the show. Jeff Palermo, News and Sports Director of Louisiana Radio Network, along with the Executive Editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, Todd Horn, and the Editor in Glenn Gilbo. LSU women's basketball team, they will be hosting the first 2 rounds of the NCAA Women's Basketball Tournament. LSU set to take on San Diego State Saturday night. Late tip-off, 9:15 from the PMAC, and then the winner of that game would get the winner of the Florida State-George Mason game that will tip off before the LSU San Diego State game. Reed Darcey from The Advocate covers the LSU women's basketball program. Reed, thanks a lot for joining us on Tiger Rag Radio on the Max Home Hotline. Over 50,000 Max Happy homeowners and counting. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, guys. How are y'all?
Oh, we're doing well. We're doing well. So by all accounts, Flau'jae Johnson and Aneesah Morrow, they're good to go, right?
Yeah, that's what Kim Mulkey said. She said it at the end of the SEC tournament after LSU lost to Texas in the semifinals. And she said it again on Sunday after the selection show. All indications are that they're good to go. Kim Mulkey went on ESPN radio this morning with T-Bob and Jacob Hester, and she said that both of them returned to LSU practice yesterday, so that's a good sign for them. They appear to be ramping up, getting ready for Saturday. We know they'll be on the floor, but I'm not quite sure we know exactly how close to 100% they'll be. I think we can only figure that out once the game tips off Saturday night, late Saturday night.
Yeah, and it's scheduled for 9:15, but I would say the chances of it actually starting at 9:15 would be probably pretty slim, since the Florida State George Mason game tips at 6:45. So do you have any no-dos packed with you? Because you're going to be up late.
Yeah, I'm going to be up late. I'm going to make sure I get a nap in, and I'm going to make sure I have an extra cup of coffee. So it's March. I think we're going to also have to move back our print deadlines, because that paper doesn't print itself. But we're going to make sure we get something in time, as long as the game doesn't go into triple overtime or something. That'd kind of be a disaster.
Well, Reed, whenever you look at this, LSU, of course, is a number 3 seed, as Jeff said, for the 4th straight year under Kim Mulkey. It's almost like she plans it this way. And when you look at the bracket in the Spokane 1, could it have been built any better for LSU? I mean, they're a 24.5 point favorite or 25 point favorite against San Diego State, a team that barely made it into the tournament by a triple overtime win in their conference tournament championship. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. So LSU's got to be expecting to win that game, but that's almost like a tailor-made game to welcome Flau'jae back to the lineup and see if her and Aneesah are 100%. And then if they win that, they'll probably, I don't know. Who do you think, Florida State or George Mason?
I think it's Florida State. I think Florida State's pretty good, and I think they could challenge LSU in the second round. They have the nation's leading scorer. Her name is Tania Latson. She's a guard. She averages close to 25 points a game. Florida State, they're also, it's not just her. They're one of 3 teams in the tournament with 3 players who score at least 15 points a game. They've got a couple other contributors who can help out as well. So I think LSU, the challenge for them isn't only just containing Tania Latson. It's also handling their post player, Michaela Timpson. She's averaging 18, 11, and 3 blocks on 54% shooting. So I think Latson gets all the headlines, rightfully so. She gets all the attention. She's going to be an All-American. But Florida State, they've got some other contributors there who can really hurt LSU. So I think that game might be tough for LSU. I do think LSU will get past San Diego State. Obviously, they're a 25-point favorite for a reason. San Diego State went 11-7 in the Mountain West, finishing 4th place. And like you said, they won their conference tournament in a crazy triple overtime game that could have gone either way. So what I'll be looking forward to on Saturday, in the first round, I'll be looking to see if LSU can get off to a fast start and really put away San Diego State as early as possible, because I think LSU and Kim Mulkey and her staff, I don't think they want to sweat that one out. I don't think they want Flau'jae and Aneesah to be playing 30, 35 minutes a game. I think in a perfect world, they'd keep their minutes down, make sure they're not getting too much run so that they can get their feet wet and ease back into action, since it's kind of been a long layoff for both of them. I don't think they want to play them too much because they'll need them for the second round.
Joining the Army is more than a chance to serve your country. It's also a great career move.
All my personal experience, I've been able to build upon that so that I could achieve construction management and training, go for a project manager planner. So when I get out of the military, I'm able to pursue a career in construction management.
Get the experience you need through service in the United States Army.
So, Reed, last year in the Baton Rouge portion of the Albany Regional, LSU sort of eased through. Well, they didn't ease through, but they had a great second half, relatively speaking, and put away their opponent in that first game. But then they found themselves playing an 11 seed in the second game in Murray State and trailing by double digits at one point. Are you saying this could be a repeat of that in some possibility?
I think it could, but the way it shook out, I don't think. I'm not sure George Mason can get past Florida State. I mean, I know George Mason's a really solid team. They did a great job in the Atlantic 10 Conference this year. But I think Florida State just has too much talent. So right now, when I'm filling out my bracket, I've got Florida State advancing into the second round, and I've got them challenging LSU in the second round. I do think LSU, if I'm predicting here, I do think LSU can get past them and probably will get past them, but not without a challenge. And like you said, you're right. I was thinking about last year, and I was thinking about how the committee sent 6-seeded Louisville and 11-seeded. It was Middle Tennessee.
Middle Tennessee.
It was a Middle Tennessee to last year to the PMAC, and I remember that Middle Tennessee game. A lot of people forget. Middle Tennessee was a rock-solid team, and they played LSU, and they had a double-digit lead, I believe either in the second quarter or by halftime, and LSU really had to come back and steal a win, I guess. So, it's March. You never quite know what you're going to get. For a team like LSU that's a little bit banged up, has a couple question marks, I think it can get dicey early in these first two rounds.
Well, if it's Florida State if LSU advances past San Diego State and they're playing Florida State the way you're predicting in your bracket, then it's going to be incumbent, I would think, for Flau'jae Johnson to take the defensive handle on Tania Latson, the leading scorer.
Yeah, you'd think so, and I think that's probably their top option if they had to choose. But I think we have to also consider, number one, how healthy is Flau'jae, right? Mm-hmm. Are you asking too much to guard the nation's leading scorer in just her second game back? And number two, do you have anyone else you can throw at her? I think Kim Mulkey and her staff really like Miracle Shepherd, for instance. We saw her start in place of Flau'jae in the SEC tournament, and I thought she played really well. She defended Madison Booker well. Booker got her shots off, and she hit a lot of contested shots because she kind of had a size advantage over Miracle. But I think she held her own, and she defended well, and she really gave LSU a spark that it needed in those kinds of games. So I think they really like her. I wouldn't be surprised if they throw Miracle onto Tania Latson just to take a little bit of pressure off Flau'jae, because that might be asking her a little too much in her second game back from this long layover to guard the nation's leading scorer. So because they'll need her, obviously they'll need so much of her offensively. So I think it could, in an ideal world, Flau'jae would guard her, but I think LSU could. I wouldn't be surprised if they went elsewhere.
So if the chalk holds, how do you see the rest of the bracket looking out when you look down the road? Because there's Ole Miss, there's Baylor, there's North Carolina State, and, of course, UCLA, among others. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I think NC State and LSU will probably meet up in the Sweet 16, and that's an interesting matchup because if you remember, those two played back the week of Thanksgiving in the Bahamas. It was one of those tournaments that teams go to in either the Bahamas or the Cayman Islands or what have you. And LSU won by 17 points. It was one of their most impressive wins of the season. It turned into at least one of those wins because NC State has had a really good year. They got off on the wrong foot. They didn't have a great start to the year. And if you remember in that tournament in the Bahamas, just to get into that matchup with LSU, NC State had to survive a pretty good scare from Southern, who had a decent lead on them through 3 quarters, and then they pulled out a win. They were not playing their best basketball back around Thanksgiving. Since then, they've won all but 2 of their conference games, and then they reached the ACC title game, and then they actually ended up jumping LSU for that last 2 seed, which is important to look how the bracket shook out. I think those teams would have been playing either way, no matter which one got the 2 seed, which one got the 3 seed. But if you're LSU, you have to be pretty happy with that because of the way the game earlier in the season went. You won't have to play 2 seed UConn. You won't have to play a 3 seed Notre Dame. You won't have to play a really hot Duke team or a really hot TCU team. I think LSU is pretty happy with the draw. I think they can beat NC State. And then if they do, they're looking at an Elite 8 matchup in all likelihood with UCLA, who they beat in the Sweet 16 last year. Obviously, 2 different teams. LSU doesn't have Angel Reese, but I got to think that they're looking at the bracket and they're thinking like, hey, we avoided South Carolina and Texas, obviously, because, they're in the SEC and they were always going to go to Birmingham, the other side of the bracket. But we also avoided USC and Juju Watkins and UConn and all these other teams that can really give LSU trouble. So I think they're confident right now, and I think that they're sort of mapping out a path to the back to the Final Four, and I think they think that anything can happen.
So the biggest factor is going to be the health of this LSU team, because they were obviously fighting the health problem as well as fatigue at some points late in the season. Yeah,
they were, and I think that was definitely part of it, why they dropped those last 2 games of the regular season. Alabama, Ole Miss. You could tell in the SEC tournament in Greenville, they really fought hard. They did against Texas, but by the end of that game, it looked like both teams really were just running on fumes. The shots were all coming up short for both teams. It was one of the uglier games LSU has played this season. That's just the way Texas plays. They're a really tough defensive team, and LSU kind of has a similar identity. So I think they've had 2 weeks off since then. That'll really be good for getting them healthy, getting them rested up, and getting them ready for the NCAA tournament. And for the fact that LSU is playing the very last possible game of the first round late Saturday night. Flau'jae and Aneesah have literally as much rest as they could have possibly had when the brackets shook out to make sure they're ready for the start of the tournament. So I think that might be actually it stinks for us and for the fans, but that might actually be a blessing in disguise that LSU's playing so late.
Reed, thanks a lot for your time, man. We really appreciate your breaking down of what's going on with LSU women's basketball. Should be interesting. We'll see what happens as the tournament rolls on.
Sure. Yep. Y'all enjoy the games. Thanks all for having me on, Eric.
Spring is sprung, the grass is riz, I know where the library is. What's happening at the library? The 19th annual One Book, One Community series celebrating sports and youth mentorship with Jeffrey Marx's best-selling book, Season of Life. Join the library for events and activities for all ages in March and April. For details, spring over to readonebook.org. That's READONEBOOK.org.